Let's start by talking about displays for categorical variables. So we have numerical summaries and graphical displays. We have two types of numerical summaries and two types of graphical displays that are appropriate for this type of data. For the numerical summaries, we have counts and percents. So what we're doing here is we've got different categories, and we're just going to go through, and first of all, for counts, we're going to count up the number of people in that category and list out the category with its count. For percents, we're going to talk about how many people of the whole are in that category. So for example, if you were to survey 100 people and ask them about their favorite color, and 40 of them said it was blue, you would say 40% of people said blue was their favorite color. And I'll give you an example of this in depth in just a minute. For the graphical displays, we have bar charts and pie charts. Those are the appropriate displays for categorical variables. And I think probably everyone has seen bar charts and pie charts before, and we're going to go through an example in depth about what they look like and how we interpret them. So let's start out with numerical summaries. So let's suppose we've collected the following data. We have 21 people here, and we've asked them about their favorite color. So the first person, for example, has said green. The second person has said blue. The 10th person has said pink. The 20th person said purple, and the last person said orange. So this is the raw data. This is just the list of every single person and their favorite color. So how do we summarize that? Well, again, there were two different ways. There's counts and there's percents. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a list of all the different responses that I got, and then I'm going to go through and I'm going to count up the number of people that said, for example, green. So if we were to do that, look through the list. Here's a green. Here's a green. No one else said green. So there's two people that'll be in the green category. Let's look at blue. Here's a blue. Here's a blue. Here's a blue. And here's a blue. That's 4. So 4 people in the blue category, and so on. So let's take a look at what this would look like. So here are all my colors listed out that everyone answered. And here are the counts that we have. 4 people for blue, 6 people for red, 2 people for green, and so on. Now for the percentages, notice I have percent of total. So we had 21 people that we asked for favorite color. So when I do the percent, I take the total count in the category and divide by the total number of people that I asked. So here, 4 out of 21 is 19%. In this case, 6 out of 21 is 28.6%. 2 out of 21 is 9.5%, and so on. Now you'll notice that sometimes when you have these percentages and you add them all up, they should add up to 100%. Sometimes they won't add up exactly, and that's okay. That's just because of rounding. So you'll notice that I rounded to 1 decimal place here. Because of that, we'll have a little bit of error. That's to be expected. So if it doesn't come out perfectly for this type of summary, that's okay. Now let's move on to the graphical displays. So we'll start with a bar chart. Probably everyone's seen a bar chart before, but let's just go over exactly what it is. In a bar chart, we have each category represented by 1 bar. And the bar's height gives us the count in that category, or the percent. You can use either one. In the example that we have here, I've got all my categories listed out at the bottom in a bar for each one, and I have the count on the side. It says frequency here, which means count. So here I have red at 6, blue at 4, green at 2, and so on. Now what you want to be careful with is that you don't confuse this with one of the displays for the quantitative variable that we'll see in a little bit, the histogram. The key thing here is that this is for a categorical variable, so the variable at the bottom, you can see the categories lined out here, not numbers. Don't get confused though if there are numbers. Let's say we recoded this. Blue is 1, green is 2, orange is 3, and so on. There would be numbers down here. Don't let that confuse you. Bar charts have bars that do not touch. So if there are bars that do not touch and this is for a categorical variable. Even if it's coded, it's a bar chart. Now that's important because when we talk about histograms, we're going to interpret them in different ways than we interpret bar charts. So you want to keep the two straight. So how do we interpret a bar chart? Well, we want to discuss the most and least popular categories. We don't want to discuss things like shape, center, and spread. And now we haven't formally defined shape, center, and spread. We're going to do that when we get to the quantitative variables. But I want to bring this up now because it's very tempting once shape, center, and spread come into play to try to use them to interpret a bar chart. And it's not correct to do that. And the reason for that is when we talk about shape and center and spread, it relies on the fact that we have an ordering. So for example, if you're talking about a histogram of salaries, there's a natural ordering to salary. People who make $50,000 make less than people who make $70,000. And people who make $50,000 make more than people who make $40,000, and so on. There is an ordering there. And I can't just go ahead and rearrange that any way that I want. So the shape will make sense. But here, if I look at the shape of this, if I kind of just imagine drawing a line around this to trace the shape of this, just like I'm doing with my mouse here. That's great. There is a shape. But think of this. This is categorical. So we're not ordered in this fashion for any particular reason other than that's the way that I listed it out. Maybe you'd want to list red first, and then blue, and then orange, and then green, and then purple, and then yellow, and then pink. And in that case, you'd have a completely different shape. Now red would be over here with blue next to it, and then we would flatline a bit here for a while we go through the green, orange, purple, and yellow, and then we come back up on the end for pink. And now you can see the shape is completely different. So because the shape can change just simply by reordering the categories, which we're allowed to do in a categorical variable, it's inappropriate to discuss the shape because the shape that I get for a set of data may not be the shape you get for the exact same set of data. So we want to be very careful when we're discussing this. Just discuss the most and least popular categories, and then you can go into whatever depth you want with that. You can say, for example here, red is the most popular category, and yellow, purple, orange, and green are tied for least popular. That's enough. Or you can go so far as to say red is the most popular, blue is the second most popular, pink is the third most popular, and then there's a four-way tie for last place with green, orange, purple, and yellow. And so on. You can go into whatever depth that you want, just as long as you're discussing ordering of categories here and not anything like shapes or centers or spreads. Okay, now let's move on to the second type of graphical display, the pie chart. And probably everyone has seen a pie chart before as well. But just in case, we'll just go through to make everything rigorous. In a pie chart, each slice is going to represent a piece of the whole, and the size of the slice represents how big of a piece that part of the data takes. So for example here, look at our pie chart of our color data. Here's red. Not a very good job here with matching up colors, but anyway, here's red. It's the teal, oddly enough, and it is the biggest chunk, because it was the most popular category. And here are purple and orange and green and yellow. We actually hit with yellow. So here are our least popular categories. You can see that all the wedges look the same size. And then here is blue, our second most popular category, and here's pink, our third most popular category. And it's just a different way of looking at the data. Kind of gives you the same idea of what's going on, just looks a little bit different. Now how do we interpret these? Well, again, we're going to discuss the most and least popular categories, just as I went through when I went through the whole chart with you on the previous slide. So it's the same type of interpretation. And here it's not as tempting because of the way this looks with the circular representation to try to discuss a center or spread. So this one is a little bit easier not to do things that you're not supposed to do with it, but just keep in mind that it's the same interpretation as what we use for a bar chart.